All right, everybody, welcome for this third installment of our fall workshop series. In hindsight, we could have probably put some of this in with one of the other ones and we would have been just fine, but we will record this and put it up for people that can't be here today, and if you need to refer back to it. So we're going to cover NSCAS alternate today, information about professional learning, information about science resources, including a new grant opportunity that we had, and Rhonda's filled people in on that recently, but give more information and more insight into that work that's being done with multiple states and partners across the nation, and then an update on NAEP as well. So thanks for being here. As always, if you have questions, feel free to post them in chat. Judy will kind of keep an eye on those and see if we need to stop and talk about them. We have multiple presenters today, so we will stop at each of those points and elicit questions from the group, additional questions from the group if anybody wants to come off of mute and share questions at those times. So I think with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Those are the topics for today, just to let you know. Just overview of information about NSCAS alternate, make sure everybody has this on their radars. So NSCAS alternate, I should have deleted that top part, sorry, is for students with significant cognitive disabilities, obviously, typically about 1% of the population. Grades 3 through 8, high school for ELA and for math, and then 5-8 in high school for science. Students that qualify for alternate at the high school level take the alternate assessment instead of the ACT. So the students, if they don't take ACT, they take NSCAS alternate. The window for that is the same as the NSCAS growth window, and the windows that we've been used to for several years now. 7-week window, 6 weeks to do testing, and then a makeup week that should be used to finish up any testing that didn't happen the rest of the time. And students are expected in those grade levels are expected to complete all content in the spring. That was interesting. Just as a reminder, schools do not receive materials anymore for NSCAS alternate. It is, you either give it online digitally, or you do print on demand. And print those materials and then destroy them securely afterwards. Proctor's input, or if student can't interact with the online assessment, proctors in most cases input those answers into the online system instead of sending materials back. So we've been doing that for the past couple of years, but the pandemic probably causes a lot of confusion about that. And some of us keep going back to the earlier days where we received shipments and then sent them back and everything, which makes sense. There is a recording proctor training that will be available for any of your staff that are giving this assessment. This assessment is a one-to-one assessment, and it is pretty personalized to the individual students. There's a lot of leeway for how the test is given because of all the different ability levels of the students that are tested with this. The vendor for this is DRC, and those online opportunities, practice opportunities, you can print assessments for practice opportunities, and all of those types of things are available in their Insight system. Just as a reminder, this will be the first year for operational science, just like the general science. So for grades 5, 8, and 11, or the third year cohort, So we'll be testing that new college and career science test for the first time. We did field testing last year. That was pushed back for a year from 2020. And that means cut scores will be done in this summer, this coming summer. Just a couple of points about all of this. So the districts mark students with the alternate assessment flag in their special education snapshot, and that is in whatever system that your district might use. SRS for most of our districts. Some of our other districts, a few of our other districts use other programs for that. But that alternate assessment flag is super important to make sure the correct students get rostered for NSCAS alternate. And this is probably one of the biggest areas where we have issues for year to year. If that alternate assessment flag is not marked, or it is marked for students that aren't supposed to take this test. And so this is important coming up also for as a reminder that if a student isn't marked with the alternate assessment flag for the winter NSCAS winter pilot, for instance, those students would be uploaded into the system, even though there is no expectation that they would take the NSCAS winter growth pilot if they qualify for the alternate assessment. So that is one thing that if you have time or your data manager can check, always a good idea to check those students with the alternate assessment flag. It seems like as IEPs are done on a regular basis and everything, that can be a part of things that are commonly overlooked in the data and need to be corrected. Maggie does a great job of trying to go through and fix those or flag them for districts, but it does seem to be one of the common errors that happen, and then students get rostered into the wrong program. Yeah, it's been said many times, and I'll continue to say it because I believe that it is very much true, is that the 1% of students that are served by the alternate assessment, the significantly cognitive disabled students, there's more diversity in their cognitive level in that 1% of students than there tends to be in the 99% of students that are served by the general assessment. And the reason I mention that at all is just as kind of a reminder that so the law only allows for 2 tests, one for the general population and one for students with significant cognitive disabilities. And then trying to make one assessment that serves all of those students in that 1% is a very difficult proposition. And we do a really good job, in my opinion, of trying to create an assessment that works for everybody and rules that works for everybody, or to the best of our ability to do that. You have students that are almost qualify for the general assessment, all the way to students that have little interaction with the world around them as far as cognitive interactions and those types of things, and trying to make a test that serves all those students is difficult. So the reason why I mentioned that in general is just because we thought we'd bring up no response again. There seemed to be some confusion around that. The expectation is that all students, for each test that they are supposed to be given, they're supposed to be administered at least one item per assessment. If the student is non-responsive and there's reason to believe that they would not be responsive for other questions, at that point you can stop the assessment. But even if there's every indication that the student wouldn't be responsive, the requirement in the expectation is that at least one item is administered before stopping the assessment. At that point in time, if a student is non-responsive after they've been administered one item and there's a reason to believe the student would not be responsive in future items, then those students need to be marked as no response, so that we can track those. Those students count as participants, but do not have don't get a score or get the lowest score as part of that administration. So just a reminder that it is expected that all students are administered at least one item before, so that they count as a participant, and that is part of the expectation. So we had some questions multiple questions the last couple of days. So I thought I would address this, that for the winter pilot, there is no NSCAS alternate for the NSCAS growth winter pilot. Students that qualify for NSCAS alternate should not take the NSCAS growth winter pilot. And districts have complete discretion over what assessment practices or they do with alternate students, if they give it an assessment or don't give an assessment, depending on the student and what information the district could glean from that. You should probably continue those practices that you've been doing over the last several years with students with significant cognitive disabilities, as far as how you run your interim windows. And so there is no expectation that you do anything at all from our perspective or from our part. So for the foreseeable future, NSCAS alternate will remain the one time a year assessment and be administered in the spring. So at this time, we don't have plans to alter the assessment schedule for NSCAS alternate. There's always the possibility of changes in the future, but we would be looking for stakeholder engagement and feedback to indicate that we should be changing that process right now. The educational instructional landscape for students that are served by alternate is pretty different in their interaction with instruction and learning is pretty different as well. So this is the way we're planning on doing it for the foreseeable future. This is a repeat of slide from NSCAS growth, just to kind of put this out there again, because I think it's relevant since the science is operational again. So as a reminder, science for the general and the alternate will be the first time operational. Therefore, we'll do cut scores in the summer. Those scores are going to be delayed because we can't provide scores until the cut score process is complete. We're still working on a schedule for that. But it's likely that it won't be until August or September that those results are ready, because the Board of Education, so it has to go through the process, cut score recommendation process with Nebraska teachers, then has to go to the board for approval. We will look at naming and achievement levels for that process. One last time, I scared a lot of people on my staff, actually, with that information in the slide last time. It's probably important to note that when we get together for advisory processes around cut scores, that we're going to put all the information out there to help us make that decision. There's reasons why we might want to keep the 3 levels and all of those types of things. There's reasons why we might want to change names. We'll put all the reasons, the pros and the cons out there, and then look for good guidance and recommendations from our advisory group. For instance, the general assessments, the science achievement level descriptors were written prior to the assessment, which we changed that process, which is commonly done. Typically, ALDs or achievement level descriptors are written after an assessment, but that's been changing across the measurement landscape. And in general, when you write your ALDs beforehand, you're getting better results, and your claims that you're making around an assessment are usually better supported in those types of things. And so there's reasons why we might not want to make big changes in those naming and achievement level descriptors and those types of things. But there's also good reasons why we might want to change it. So when we make that decision, what I'll tell you is that we'll get good feedback, and we'll try to make the best decision for everybody that we can.
Jeremy, could you clarify, because you mentioned that the science standards were going to be, or the scores would be delayed due to this process, is that going to impact the scores for ELA or math?
No, in ELA and math scores you should have right away for NSCAS growth, right? So you'll get within that 72 hours in the spring, you'll get the ELA and math scores. You might get some proficiency information, some of the proficiency information a little bit later, but that should not slow up that process. It would be just the science scores that will be delayed until the fall. Thanks. That's a good question. So just as a reminder too, that this will be the first time that the college and career ready standards for the general and college and career ready extended standards for the alternate are being assessed. Likely there'll be lower percentages of proficiency than there have been in the past for science. Once again, the teachers are going to be asked a pretty significantly different question, right? So the last time we set standards for science, which was a long time ago now, to be perfectly honest, because of all the delays and everything, the question that teachers were asked is, what does a student that is barely proficient for basic skills, right? So what is a student that when they looked at items, they asked the question around basic proficiency. The question this time will be, where is a student, what questions would a student get correct that are for a student that is barely proficient and or on track for being college and career ready. So it's going to be a different question. And most likely going to be lower percentage of proficiency than we had in the past, just as a reminder.
Could we have one more clarification around the delay in scores? That would not include ELA or math alternate, correct? It's just the science that would most likely be delayed.
The science, yeah. So the plan would be to provide, and what we've done in the past is we provided spreadsheets around ELA and math with the science blank, and then we updated those later on. So I don't, the plans around that haven't been fully realized yet, but we'd try to make sure that you had ELA and math much earlier than you had science, and try not to make sure that there's not a big delay in that. Like I said, the details around that haven't been finalized yet, but that would be the way that I would try to make sure that happens.
Okay, and then, yeah, and then a couple other questions we have. When you're setting cut scores, you do look at the bottom of the group to set the cut scores, right? So you're looking at barely proficient for the on-track group, right?
Yeah, so when you're setting the career, yeah, you're looking at the students that are barely proficient, right? Or barely, or just at the edge of being on track for being college and career ready.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, and then the question is, the score reports for students won't be available for either test until fall, is that right?
Correct. And the ISRs for individual students would be delayed because of the science, right? So we can't produce ISRs until the science cut scores are set, and then those would be produced and then sent out. So the ISRs for individual students that would be sent home won't be until later, but the districts will have ELA and math much earlier than they'll have science, is the intention. Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yes, those are good questions. Sorry, I did not do a great job explaining all that. Yeah. Just a couple of points also about the alternate assessment states are capped at about one, or are supposed to be capped at 1% participation on the alternate exam. This changed several years ago, and states have been working to get to that level. Previously, it was 1% being proficient on that assessment, so that was pretty different. The U.S. Department of Education has a process where if you're not at that 1%, you can ask for a waiver. Nebraska has been doing a great job. We've been right around that 1% for the last several years. But because of continued interruptions and data confusion, I shouldn't say data confusion, just last year's participation rates, let's put it that way. We are inclined to ask for the waiver, even though we don't know for sure if we'll be over the 1% threshold. And so we are planning on, once again, asking for that waiver to go over the 1%. It's somewhat difficult to anticipate if we will need it or not, because that data keeps changing, and last year was an interesting year as far as participation and everything goes. So we'll be asking for public comment. This usually elicits very little interest, and what interest it does is always interesting. Oftentimes people say, well, we shouldn't be asking for a 1% threshold at all. We shouldn't test these students. And while I appreciate that opinion, it's really not an option by law. So, it is kind of what it is. And most of the time it's a good thing that we're asking for that as we continue to work to get to that 1% threshold. It is probably important to remind everybody that that is not a 1% threshold for districts. Districts can go over the 1%, but we ask for justification about why that happens in documents and everything. So the 1% threshold documents will still be sent out. That is coming very soon. So a couple of pieces about that. All districts are required to complete these documents. That is, there's no exception for that. If we want to do the waiver, the guidelines from USDOE require us to produce those and have those on file. So all districts, even though you might not have any alternate students, have to fill out that paperwork. So this is a little off from what I normally do. I'm gonna just kind of pause here a second and just, so everybody has things about their jobs that are not their favorite thing to do, and many of us here at the department, compliance things are part of the job, and we would appreciate if everybody would take and actually, let me start with this. Most of our districts do a great job of filling out the paperwork, turning it in on time, and doing it to the best of their ability. But we would appreciate if everybody would take that extra second to check the documents. These change annually, not because we want to make things complicated, but because the USDOE guidance changes annually. The waiver process changes annually. I know that it is a pain to do these things, and it's one more hoop to jump through, but if you would stop, make sure you get it right the first time, it would save everybody a lot of time. And just a reminder that we are just doing our jobs, and so being pleasant in your interactions is always appreciated. And once again, I'll say that 99% of the time that happens, and we appreciate it. But just taking that extra minute might save everybody a few emails and some extra time all the way around. So make sure you check that and do that. Also, don't send student identifiers in that submission. And as part of the guidance in the waiver process, making sure staff is exposed to the NDE guidance about students, how to identify students that qualify for the alternate is super important as well. Last slide here for alternate, and these are, somebody might want to pop that link into the chat for people. It'll be in the PowerPoint as well. These just got put up. So instructional supports for science extended indicators. So one thing that I'll say in general is please make sure these resources get to staff that are making curricular decisions around students with significant cognitive disabilities. In some places, the support for teachers that are working with these students is really pretty good because the programs are pretty well established. Typically, places where there's multiple students and multiple staff working with these students, there's a lot better support for that. But sometimes staff is making their own decisions about own curricular decisions on their own, isolated. Maybe there's only one student in the district or whatever the case may be. And so having additional instructional supports is probably pretty beneficial when you're making individual decisions around instruction. And so these were created by teachers, educators around how to different ways that a teacher might instruct students with significant cognitive disabilities around the actually very difficult extended indicators around our college and career ready science standards. And so we think that these will be helpful options for instruction on how to make these difficult college and career ready standards more accessible to students with significant cognitive disabilities. They are suggestions, you don't have to follow them, but they might be helpful for your teachers as they're looking for different ways to interact with their students, especially trying to relate those to real world experiences that would be beneficial for the student to know as well. And so we think these will be helpful to your teachers that are working with these students. Once again, completely optional, just trying to help support those educators that are working with these students and trying to provide additional opportunity to learn that content around those extended science indicators. So thank you, Sharon, for popping that in there. Those are newly available, and we're pretty proud of the work that Nebraska teachers and our partners did to put those together and try to make those available to everybody. So Trudy, what additional, let me stop for a second. Sharon, what did I miss?
Actually, you did a pretty good job. I just wanted to support what you said about the documentation. And this year, because of the data that we had previous year, we will be using your projections that you provide us as to how many students will be taking the alternate assessment. So it is very important that you get your projections submitted so that I'll be able to work on that, because we have to have our waiver submitted in the middle of December. So time is running short on getting everything done. So, and then once again, it's federal mandates about the 1%. And if we do not continue to show progress going towards the 1%, there can be sanctions placed upon Nebraska. And of course, those sanctions, of course, start out with funding and then could move down to where we would be classified as an at-risk state. So that's why we push really hard to try and get these things down to as close to the 1% as we can. And then to support these instructional supports for science, we're also working on math instructional supports. And those were written and were reviewed by Nebraska educators this summer for us. So we are keeping Nebraska educators involved as much as we can.
Yeah, and some of those processes changed because of the pandemic and because of sub shortages and everything. Typically, we were planning on having Nebraska educators write them and then review them as well. In this case, we asked DRC to help write them and then bringing Nebraska educators in to review them, just because getting, as you all know, getting staff to be able to do work like that during the school year is very difficult at this point in time with the sub shortages and everything. And instructional time being as important as it always is, but even more so with all of the impacts because of the pandemic. Shelley, the projections are turned into to Sharon. Emails will be going out requesting that information here very soon. And so those are coming your way. And those projections are based on spring. Yep. So those are coming. Any other questions before we turn to professional learning?
There was a question that is not exactly connected to the alternate assessment, but why doesn't the learning continuum go past 300 RIT to help the instructional needs?
So Teresa and I have been having a chat offline
Okay.
and sitting on that, and so it ends up with those outliers of what the majority of students are between that 100 and 300, but the score does go up to 350.
Okay. And to clarify, it's the special education director that submits the documentation, or the DAC, or the superintendent, Sharon, who submits that?
We leave that up to the district. Some districts have the special education directors do it. Some districts have the DACs do it. And sometimes I get it from the superintendent. So
Okay.
district decision.
And
Thank
sometimes
you.
that person is the same person for all three of those roles as well, right? So Sharon, it goes out to DACs, is that correct though? And then the DAC can forward it to whoever needs to finish it?
It is sent to the superintendent, the DACs, and if there is a SPED director for that district, it goes to the SPED director also.
Yes, we are going to add those links. Those just got populated, and Stacy will add those links for the instructional supports to the alternate page as well. We just haven't tied those over to that yet, so we will get that done. Absolutely.
Jeremy, so they're placed on the SPED site, but there is a link on the assessment page that takes you to them under alternate assessment.
Okay, so we'll double check that and make sure that it's there and that it's clear that what those are. Yep, absolutely. Great. Other questions? Okay. Allie, is this you, I assume?
We're going to start it off with Trudy.
Okay. Well, just let me know when you want me to go forward and I will try to pay attention.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, so if when we go to the next slide, it identifies our professional leads. Allie Martinez-Wilkinson is the person who is most closely associated with the Certified Facilitator Program and Assessment Literacy. She's the one who has been working with our state and our educators, specifically the Certified Facilitators, around that topic of assessment literacy. Dennison Bola is our newest professional learning lead. He is specifically working with formative assessment, bringing in formative assessment practice into our conversations and dialogue. So I'll turn it over to Allie to explain around Certified Facilitator Program. Whoops, where'd she go? There she is.
What a horrible time for my internet to act up. I'm like, everyone froze, and I get the message, my internet is unstable. So I'll try to make sure I can see people moving to make sure that I have not frozen again. So thank you, everyone. Excited about all of the work and want to say thank you to the 72 certified facilitators that we have across the state. Just a little bit about the program, lots of resources. And so we have monthly e-newsletters that go out with information from NWEA, with updates from NDE, with the latest blog posts and information to further assessment literacy across the state. There are 4 recorded webinars on various topics. We talk about assessment empowerment, and we have the new reports are coming out in February. And then we have a research study webinar at the end of the year. Those webinars are recorded and sent out 2 weeks prior, and then we follow up with a live Q&A. And then the additional 2 live webinars come from a fall and a spring CF webinar, where we try to highlight what's happening across the state. We also have workshops that we provide that take some of the NWEA training through a Nebraska lens and make sure that we have that available for certified facilitators. And then we have a save the date document. So I'm going to drop that link into the chat for everyone. +1s are always encouraged at the workshops, and we're going to go through that in just a little bit. But just contact your certified facilitator, and we would love to have you if there's a upcoming workshop that sounds interesting to you. I'll turn it over to Dennison for just a little bit on what he's working on with the Formative Support Network.
Okay, Trudy, did you want to touch on the why and the purposes?
Sure. I just wanted to give you folks notice if you've not heard about this yet. We have started a new initiative in our attempts to create balance within our assessment system supports. So the Formative Assessment Supports Network is the work that we have begun. We've brought in experts, folks that are assessment literate leaders. But through the Formative Assessment Supports Network, we are expanding opportunities for teachers to really grow their assessment literacy. And our work also includes offering opportunities to expand the use of formative assessment practice in the classroom. And we are approaching this in several ways. And so I'm going to have Dennison take you through some of that, that work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trudy. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'll touch first of all on what we're doing with teachers. So in September and October 2021, we met with classroom teachers from around the state to get their input regarding the knowledge, skills, and dispositions that assessment literate teachers demonstrate. With this approach, we started our program design process with the voice of Nebraska teachers in the center. We will build on the input received in the coming months. And I want to thank all of the teachers who have contributed and the districts that they have represented for the valuable input that we have received. We're also having conversations with NDE content area leads in every subject area. We are seeking to learn about the formative assessment practices that are already being implemented in Nebraska classrooms. And we're asking the content area leads about the thought leaders in their content areas who advocate for the implementation of formative assessment practices as a major lever that can be used to impact student learning positively. We already completed the first round of conversations with content area leads for math, English language arts, reading, special education, science, social studies, and high ability learners. The third item that I want to touch on is what we're calling the Formative Assessment Support Network. Again, we're at the design stage. So we are in the process of designing and developing professional learning experiences and a coaching program to support the implementation of formative assessment practices in Nebraska classrooms. This is based on our belief that formative assessment practices support instruction and positively impact student learning outcomes. This belief is supported by research from Hattie, Brookhart, Heritage, Stiggins, Marzano, and all of the big names in educational research today. So with that, Ali, I'll pass the microphone back to you.
Thanks so much. And as we move to the next slide, I just wanted to highlight some of the workshops that are available, and that +1 certified facilitators have this list, but any +1 is welcome to attend. So looking at the only one we can't, quality classroom assessment has already occurred, but upcoming in November, we have triangulating data for instructional insight and applying classroom assessment standards. Then later in, I want to get it right. January, we have student-centered assessment and using ALDs to ensure classroom rigor. So those workshops are coming up. And then we have our formative assessment workshops, clarifying learning, providing feedback, activating learners, and eliciting evidence. So there's a slew of workshops that are available and some resources that certified facilitators can choose to attend, and then they can provide that training to your district. So just work with your certified facilitator. The last piece that I wanted to touch on the next slide are the resources that are coming for NSCAS growth. We know that everyone's excited and maybe a little nervous and want to make sure that it goes as smooth as possible. So we want to provide those resources. In professional learning, we're going to have a reports portfolio. So those of you who are used to the MAP growth reports portfolio, and hopefully you've seen the new expanded 101-page reports portfolio, there is going to be a reports portfolio. How many times can I say that word? For NSCAS growth. So that will be released on November 8th. We're also planning 1-hour sections of professional learning. There'll be a PowerPoint and a handout that goes with different topics as we move into the spring and summer, preparing for NSCAS growth. We will continue with our certified facilitator monthly networking meetings where certified facilitators can bring those questions. And then coming soon, we're going to have a one-place stop of the videos, the vignettes, the how-tos, all of the resources that we have created to prepare for NSCAS growth. So be on the lookout for that one-page document. I do see a question from Melanie. Just go ahead and email me privately and we'll talk about CFs and who is your certified facilitator and if there's anything that's still open. So always happy to talk about the positions. Jill, I'm hopeful that the one-pager will also be ready to go out in the near future, probably by the end of next week. With that, I think we're ready to go over to, I think it's science next.
Hey, Allie, it's Teresa. I'm sorry. Can I interrupt for a moment before you go on?
Yep, I was just going to say, are there other questions that we
Okay.
we can direct towards Allie or Dennison or Trudy at this point in time?
Yeah, so Allie, the teachers at Columbus Public Schools are very, very versed in going to the Nebraska NWEA page. When will all of those old spring NSCAS documents be updated, be cleared out of there? And do you plan on posting all of the updates in there fairly soon for the winter pilot?
We do, and we want to make sure there is a delineation between last year's materials and this year's materials. So I want to make sure, because there's a tab, and I'm sure that you've seen this, but Jeremy, do you want me to share screen real quick and just go to that section? Okay. So Teresa, you tell me if I'm following along and making sure that this is the right page that you're talking about, the portal.
Yep, that's our teachers. That's what we have them mark.
Yep.
So they can get to all the platforms. And I guess what I'm hoping for is, because I'm sure we're not special in this, like our elementary buildings in our district are K4. So hoping that when you update this, it will be extremely clear that K2, the Proctor Guide will be K2, MAP growth, the 3-4 Proctor Guide for NSCAS growth, that it will be extremely clear between the two. That's my hope.
No, duly noted. And we just want to be careful on those grade levels because NWA makes recommendations and districts choose. So we will try to keep it aligned with that language, but always very careful. So we have our MAP growth resources and then our NSCAS growth resources. What on this page, I feel that this has been caught up to date. Where have you seen outdated materials? Because I'll take that back and we'll make sure that we get that corrected.
So like if you scroll to the top, go back to the top, see how all of so when I was just on there, can you go back one, go to the landing page. Now scroll down for me. So when I was just on there today, stop right there. See the 2021 assessment coordinator things? That's old. Like
Yeah, that's all
There's
just
some old
archived,
things in
so
there.
they come into the assessment coordinators. Would it help if we put the year 21, 22 here?
Yes, it'd be, and
Okay.
I don't even know why I would archive the 2021. Yep,
I can take that.
perfect.
back. Absolutely,
Yeah, thank you.
no problem. And then I was trying to catch up in the chat. Were there any other questions?
We anticipate the accessibility and accommodation manual. We are looking at updates, and so we're having that conversation soon. If there are few major revisions, then I think what we're looking for, Jeremy, if correct me if I'm wrong, is to send out highlights by the end of this week, and then a document, an updated document early next week. Is that correct,
Yeah,
Jeremy?
I believe we said a summary of any changes on Monday next week, and then finalized document by the end of next week is what the goal is.
Then I think
Okay.
there's one question left from Melanie about the 1 hour PL sections. Those we're looking anticipation of release, the first ones available in February. And then those will continue to roll out in the spring and into the summer.
And Allie, Melanie, hi. And let me just show you my face, start my video here. So I'm really here and I appreciate your input and just your feedback on many fronts. So help me to understand when you showed the NSCAS growth slide and you mentioned then the professional learning, is that then for, give me the purpose. Is it related to how to read reports, how to use the data? What is the intent of that 1 hour production?
Sure. So we're going to have a suite of 1 hour professional learning opportunities that talk about what is a computer adaptive assessment, how to look at reports. It'll be a lot like what we have for MAP growth, but now it'll be NSCAS growth, and there are going to be some differences. So we are preparing a full suite. I think the last time I checked, there's going to be about 15 different 1 hour segments that certified facilitators can choose and decide if it's a leadership audience, if it's a teacher audience. And so each one of those hour segments will have its own PowerPoint and a handout, because I think just in the way that the world is working, gone are the 4 or 8 hour trainings that you can do. It's more likely in PLCs, or you get, half an hour on the principals meetings for your district. So that PL plan is being developed now. As we all know, this is the pilot and reports are still changing and in flux. So we're trying to keep up with that, but just want everyone to know that that is coming out. We plan for a full rollout in 21, 22. Well, you will have all the professional learning options, and your certified facilitators will be able to access those materials.
Okay, and one point of clarification, sorry, I don't mean to ask so many questions. So those will be they won't be live. It'll be a module basically that they have available to them with the PowerPoint and the handout, so that they can then move forward with the PD in our own district.
And they choose exactly how they'll roll that out, just like we've done with all of our other workshops. Exactly.
Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Okay. We do have further questions. The links to the user role description and test season checklist on the October 25th DAC email didn't work. Are there links available at NDE? And if so, do we know where those are?
And I'm sorry, I'm going to say this again. Tammy, is it Webster? Is it Webster? Weber?
Stacy. Stacy.
Thank you. So she sent them to me yesterday, and they were updated in the most recent DAC communication. They actually work now. And so I just got them yesterday from her. And then I think she updated the chart that had those as options, because I too didn't have them. And actually they're really, really good. It's basically a 2-sided handout on roles and the checklist. So ask her and see if she has it, because I know it's updated now.
Okay, so it was in the updated DAC that came out yesterday afternoon? Recently, yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
very good.
I just got it.
Okay,
Yesterday.
very good. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Do we have an updated release date for the NSCAS reports from 2021? Are you talking about the?
So
Bethany, could you
I'm
explain?
Bethany, could
talking
you
about
clarify?
the summer report, like with all the language about why we have to be cautious and like-
So the release of the 21, the public release of the 21 data.
or a preview of what it's going to be or something.
Yes, so we are asking for input from AAA, right, around some of those documents, and that should go out to actually as soon as we're done here. And then we're getting that feedback, and then we're going to be releasing those probably either at the end of the week or next week. There's some movement as far as what the when the public release is going to happen, but that changed pretty significantly yesterday because we had some technical issues around the special report. So I don't have a date for the public release at this time, but we continue to work on those documents so that districts have plenty of time to be ready for that public release when it happens. So more information should be coming soon to you, very soon to you in districts. And we are, those, like I said, those support documents, we are getting some district input on those documents. And so trying to make those the best that we can so that we can support communication efforts around not only the state release of state information, but when districts or that information for districts is ready, that it can be communicated around that as well. So.
Thank you.
Jeremy,
Yeah.
Jeremy, without, I know you just said it will be, but can you, like, in a vague way, is it being moved away from originally you said mentioned by the state board? Is it?
Yeah, we thought I actually don't know. That's the problem is that we found out there were some technical issues yesterday, and the commissioner's going to have to make some decisions around if he's going to move that or not. So I haven't.
Our board meeting is the Monday after, and so I'm trying to decide how panicked I need to be next week. That's all.
Yeah,
If it was not gonna be Friday, then I probably would get another month.
So my guess is that you're going to get another month, but I'm not the commissioner, nor am I making a decision there. So
No, I just didn't know when you said there was some movement. I'm assuming that's what you meant. So it's not necessarily.
Yeah, it's really uncertain right now. So we
Okay.
want to be, so we've gotten a lot of feedback actually in the last, I'd probably say a week, about additional concerns about the public release and communication efforts. And so we're trying to double back and make sure that we're supporting districts and supporting the message. In general, it's really important that anybody that looks at 21 results understands that the pandemic had significant impacts. Understanding those impacts is really difficult because of the number of variables. And so we really want to make sure that that message is crystal clear coming out of the department, but also that we provide the same talking points to districts. So if they want to use those talking points or add to those talking points, that they can do that in sufficient time as well. So most of the delay has not been because we can't get the work done. It's because that we're trying to make sure that we're adequately supporting districts around the public release, as opposed to just throwing data out there that can be very confusing and potentially harmful if not understood by the public in general. So know that those pieces are coming. I have, like I said, the email ready to go to our assessment and advisory accountability group to review the first 3 documents and provide feedback around those. And I'm sure they will be better because of that feedback. And then we have a couple other documents as well, support documents that we are working on, including the special report itself, which I'm doing most of the writing on. So it's kind of slow right now, but we'll also be providing access to that special report and eliciting feedback around that as well, trying to make sure that districts or the public understands things. I can't control what the media does and everything, but I can try to at least get them to at least acknowledge some of the pieces that we want them to acknowledge. So
Jeremy, this is Allison Jonas and
Hey.
Gosper again. Just to clarify, we have our board meetings November 8th. I'm sure there's many people that are in the same boat.
yeah,
Board that is interested in these results. Would you say we need to wait until that stuff is released before we would share that information with them? And if so, would you anticipate that we would have it by November 8th or not?
So yes, you need to wait for the boards because it's a public meeting and it's embargoed at this time. And so I don't know for sure if it's going to get pushed back. My gut tells me most likely it's going to get pushed back, and November 8th is not going to be within or after the release time. Is what my gut tells me, but that's not official.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. We will.
I think there's just one question I haven't answered from the chat yet, Jeremy.
Sure, go ahead.
So
Yep, and then we'll kick it over to Rhonda.
the how-to videos are going to be released with November 8th. Those should be available when the platform opens.
Okay.
Right, so
Thanks.
that includes the training videos. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, the embargo was only, so ISRs were the embargo around ISRs or individual student reports was lifted. It was not the aggregate data. So the state data and district data was not, the embargo was not lifted. Yes, ISRs could be released. So the ISRs for the pilot did not have aggregate data on them. They only had individual student data on them. And so we allowed those to go out. Once again, trying to please all of the people that were making demands on us and trying to balance, walk that fine line between trying to make things easy on districts and trying to make sure that the communication was clear. So yeah, the ISRs were really, embargo was released and you could send those out at any time. If you sent those out, perfectly fine. Sorry for confusion. I know that that has moved more than we would like it to move. And so I apologize. Okay, Rhonda, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be talking about the Science Formative Assessment Task Repository to begin with. And I just dropped the link here as well as the password. This is password protected only because we don't want students to be able to access them since we're using them for formative purposes to see what students know and can do. This repository was and is being continued to be developed by Nebraska educators across the state. They are the ones writing these formative tasks. And I see we have a couple of folks on the call who actually have been taking part and have developed some of these that are in our repository. And this repository, these tasks, these formative assessment tasks were developed using the principled assessment design process. Okay, next slide. So as you get into the repository, it's basically in a Google format. You can see all of the folders, and I've highlighted that we have just recently this week added science assessment tasks at grade 4, grade 7, and high school physical science. We brought these educators in last summer. Then they revised their tasks based on high quality feedback that they got around science content, accessibility, and bias. And just the idea of, are they high quality tasks? So they revised them, and then NDE went back in as well and revised them. And we have these now in the repository. Before we had 5th and 8th only. We also have blank templates so teachers or educators can write their own. And we have learning modules that explain, how do I unwrap something? How do I unwrap a standard? What does that mean? So we have learning modules that teachers can do individually or in PLCs as well. And a lot of that work was done with the skills grant, which was the first science assessment grant that Nebraska was the lead state on.
Yeah.
Also, I did.
Oh, sorry, Rhonda, I'm going to come off and just put kudos out there for this work, right? So I can't say enough about the people that have worked on this, educators within NDE and within our districts, and getting these formative tasks out there. They are very much aligned and are similar to the tasks that are on the NSCAS assessment. Super important, I think, for your teachers and your students to have access to these or similar types of tasks. Super excited that we're getting those off grades, those non-tested grade information out there, and trying to support the high school as well. And these tasks really do a great job, I believe, in supporting the learning around the college and career ready science 3-dimensional standards. And so just a lot of thanks to the teachers and the educators across the state that have worked so hard to get these out there and really provide models about what these tasks can look like, and also the resources around creating your own and everything. I think there's just a lot of valuable content here for science educators as we continue those shifts across the state with the science.
Yes, and I'm going to show you like how they're aligned and everything here in just a second. But just like Jeremy said, we couldn't have done it without ESU folks, educators, curriculum directors. We had all folks involved in this work. And so teachers within the classroom. Summer of 2020 is when the 5th and 8th grade tasks were written. And summer of 2021, this past summer, we brought in virtually 4th, 7th, and high school physical science teachers. We hope by January of 2022 to have some sample tasks for all grades, including kindergarten. But we won't have as many to start with, but we'll continue to work on building this repository out. So next slide. So as you go into, I wanted to just walk you through it really quickly. As you go into for a grade level folder. So here's grade 5. The standards are listed. So a teacher can literally hover over what standard they're looking for an assessment. They're teaching, they're thinking, I want to know what my students know and can do about. So they hover over the standard. And there are the 4 standards for 5th grade. Next slide. Once they get into the standard, you can see at the top of this slide right here that 5.3.1 is the standard that I went into. And you can see that there are 2 indicators listed here that we already have tasks developed for. We don't have tasks yet at every indicator, which puts different practices with different cross-cutting concepts. But we are, like I said, we're continuing to grow this. But we do have tasks for 2 of the indicators that would give you information about what your students know and can do around those 2 indicators, giving you information about that standard. So the grain size does get smaller here. Okay, next slide. Once you get into an indicator, I chose 5.3.1b. These are the folders the teacher will see, or the educator. There is a folder with design tools, which I will show you in a minute what is in there. And you can see this indicator literally has 2 tasks developed to it. So a teacher could look at those and make decisions about which task they want to use, what it's aligned to, and so forth. And I'll show you those documents on the next couple slides. Next slide. So when you get into the design tools, you might ask yourself, what's in there? Well, the teacher said was highly valuable. This is where teachers or educators started developing the tasks. They first unwrapped the standard at the indicator level. So it's what prior knowledge do students need? What are the key aspects of this indicator? And so that unwrapping tool with all that information is in here for teachers to pull up and become more familiar with that indicator. Like, what does it entail? There's also something called a task specifications tool that the educators completed too. And this is just a menu of options. Like, I could create many tasks, MANY, from this task specification tools by just plucking out pieces from it to create my own so that my task is valid and reliable. Now, the teachers themselves, they did that. They used this task specifications tool to create their own task. Okay, next slide. Within the task folder, like this is the task 1 folder, what will I find as a teacher? Well, I'll find the student worksheet, and it's in Word form. So I can just download it to my computer. I can edit it if I would like. I could add some other questions or prompts. I could take some off. We want it very teacher friendly, so they know their students and what they're trying to find out. And then there's an educator task administration guide for every task. It talks about the purpose of the task. Why would you use it? What is it aligned to for all 3 dimensions? How long might it take? And if there's any videos you might be able to show to gather, as your interest, to gather your kids, to hook your students into what they're working on. So that's what's in the task folders. Next slide. And as Jeremy noted before I switched to SIPS, these were developed using the same principled assessment design process that we use to develop the task for NSCAS summative. So these tasks are going to look very familiar to students when they take NSCAS summative if they've been working and utilizing some of these tasks, because indicator level for the classroom, so you get teachers can get their fingers on the pulse of what students know and can do and can make some teacher decisions. And at the state summative level, of course, the grain size is going to get a little bigger, might combine multiple indicators, so forth. So it might get, the grain size gets a little bit larger. All right, I'll keep going. I don't see any questions in the chat yet. SIPS is, whoops, can you back up just a second, Jeremy? SIPS is basically the grant that Nebraska is now leading, and there's what it stands for. It's a mouthful, and it runs through 2023. And next slide. This shows you our partners. We're really excited about this one. This is kind of an offspring grant that we got after doing the skills work, which a lot of what you saw with the repository came about because of some of the skills work we did and the processes we learned. So this involves 8 states, Nebraska being the lead, and here are our organizational partners that we're working with across the nation on this grant. And I just want to highlight a little bit about what this grant is and how we're going to involve schools and districts. Okay, next slide. So this is how things are happening with the grant as far as the deliverables. We are done with year 1 up here in the top right-hand corner. That was all the foundational pieces. We now have a website, we have a theory of action, we've made some claims and measurement targets have been set. And we are hot in the process of year 2, which I'm so excited about year 2, because this is when curriculum and common assessment development is happening. And we are creating 2 year-long courses, and we'll have one at grade 5 and one at grade 8, and they will have 4 instructional units in them, and they are going to be aligned to bundles of the NGSS performance expectations. And Nebraska we're NGSS like standards. So I went through these bundles and checked off the alignment to our standards for Nebraska for 5th and 8th grade that we'll be utilizing for these instructional units. And we are just almost spot on. We're very close. Teachers across all 8 states, we have teachers involved in developing these units. Then this coming summer, we're going to be bringing in teachers from all 8 states to learn the principled assessment design process to develop assessments, formative assessments that will be embedded within these instructional units. We also are creating right now, currently, as I speak with some Nebraska educators, as well as the other 7 states, some end of unit assessments. So we're developing unit 1, it'll have an end of unit assessment. So we're excited about all that. You can see I put Nebraska educators will be involved in these design workshops this summer. We'll bring in a larger group to support the work. I'm really excited about this coming spring. I'll be reaching out possibly to districts and schools. This is just still, we're still in the phase of talking about this, to have some COG labs of our end of unit assessments. So I told you we're developing unit 1 and unit 2 right now. We're in the mix of it with these teachers. And so I might reach out to some districts or classrooms in grades 5 and 8, and they can check with all the powers that be to say, can we be involved in this? Can we administer some end of unit assessments? If we feel our kids, based on our curricula or curriculum, have had opportunity to learn all of these performance expectations within the bundle, can we give the end of unit assessment so I can give me another feedback about how my kids are doing? So we might ask some classrooms or districts just to, excuse me, give just the end of unit assessments alone. Then I would, across all 8 states, we're going to look at doing maybe a small scale tryout. COG labs where we have kids processing out loud, doing think alouds. First of all, they'll be given the instructional unit. The teacher would teach the unit and then administer the end of unit assessment. We would do a COG lab with the students, a smaller scale, again, smaller numbers of students. Think aloud, talk to us about how you're approaching these questions or prompts, because we feel like we can learn a lot about that before we move that thinking by teachers as well as students before we move into our pilot study, which you can see is year 3. And in year 3, it'll be a larger scale pilot study here. We will be, all 8 states will be asking districts or schools who would be interested, would you want to pilot 1 unit? And the embedded tasks as well as the end of unit task. Would you like to try out or pilot 2, 3, 4 units? And again, these are highly aligned to our NSCAS or our standards, college and career related standards for science. And they are also being developed using the principal assessment design process. So these tasks as well are being developed very similarly to the way we've done our formative repository and our summative tests. So it's very, very aligned. So be reaching out. That would be the year 2022-23 that we would involve hopefully some Nebraska educators, grades 5 and grades 8. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Okay, and just I think I wanted to just show you, the unique characteristics of this project. These units and end of unit assessments are stackable. So what I'm saying by that, when you teach all 4 units, or even if you teach 2 units, you're going to see progressions of learning by the students across those assessments. From unit 1 to unit 2, we'll be showing a progression of learning, growth in all 3 dimensions. So I'm really excited about that. So teachers will get evidence of that progressional learning through these instructional embedded assessments, as well as end of unit assessments. And they are going to be portable. Eventually, all students would be able to take them online. Okay, next slide. I just wanted to show you the bundles. I know these are small and you can look at them later, but for 5th grade, here's some topic bundles. The first unit will be developed around this bundle. So you can see the first unit for 5th grade is all going to be about physical science. And if you took these and you mapped them right back to our standards, you would see that, they're almost identical. But then some bundles are very integrated. You might notice bundle 2 is going to involve physical and life science. Bundle 3 involves engineering and earth science. So it's a mix. And bundle 4 is also very integrated, physical and earth science. So those are the bundles we're looking at to develop these units around. Okay, next slide is just the grade 8 bundles for this grant that our instructional units will be developed around. So just wanted you to have those at your fingertips. Really excited about the work, excited about the opportunity to involve Nebraska educators as well as classrooms and districts in some of this work, not only through the pilot, but possibly through the COG labs. And do feel that this work really supports and aligns to what we're currently doing in Nebraska around the college and career ready standards. And yes, NGSS stands for the Next Generation Science Standards. And like I said, our college and career science standards are very closely aligned to those standards.
If Rhonda, should districts be doing anything if they're interested in being involved in this work?
Great question, Jeremy. If anyone is interested, I'm going to put my email in the chat. I've already had a couple districts reach out to me. If you're interested in any way in being involved with either the COG labs, possibly this spring, and again, it's grades 5 and grades 8. I wish it was every grade. What we're hoping is to develop a model here of how to do the work. So not only are we creating the models, we're creating processes on how you do the work. So we might be able, then states could pick it up and maybe look at doing it for grades 4 and grade 7 and so forth, because we want more than just grades 5 and 8 receiving science instruction. So if you're interested in any way, email me or say, I'd just like more information to bring back to our district, because it sounds like something our 5th grade teachers would be really interested in, doing a unit, giving those end of unit assessments, doing a couple units. It could be a year-long, 2022-23, it could be a year-long curricula for you, highly aligned, high quality instruction, high quality materials, as well as these embedded assessments and end of unit assessments. So something to think about, really excited. And again, we can't do all this without our teachers and educators across Nebraska. And we already have them involved in this work, and we'll be reaching out for more to be involved.
Yeah, there's some really good work going on here and great people as well. So it's like a superstar Hall of Fame science and science measurement people of all types. Jim Pellegrino, to drop one name, is doing a lot of work with this. It's kind of a unique opportunity. So if you think your district is maybe up for some of this, it directly supports that instruction around those college and career ready science standards, which we're being assessed on this year and into the future. And so good opportunities for districts that are in all kinds of places as far as integrating those college and career ready science standards, whether with whatever materials you're doing. So good opportunities.
Right. And Jeremy, that's great. I'm glad you add. One last thing I want to add is that we are looking at, once these units are developed with the embedded assessments and end of unit assessments, we're going to be looking at some other high quality instructional materials we know that are being used, for example, Amplify, Open SciEd. And we're going to be looking at saying to educators where then this could fit, where could this end of the unit assessment fit within that, if you're using Amplify, or if you are using, like I said, one of the other curriculi, you could still deliver pieces of this to support and give your teacher more feedback and to see this progressional learning as well. So we're going to hopefully develop those things as well to support districts who have some things already in place. I just saw a question pop in the chat, and I love the question. Do you have feedback from teachers who participate in creating the repository about how the SIPS experience has impacted their instruction? Heard a ton and their student learning. We've heard a lot from teachers really about their understanding of the standards and understanding of how do I elicit that kind of evidence. Because our standards, they're 3-dimensional, they're very different. There has to be instructional shifts occurring in the classroom in order to elicit this kind of evidence from your students. And so the teacher said this process really, of developing these assessments really had them stop and think about what they're currently doing, what their pedagogy looks like, and how would I elicit that type of evidence from my students if I know this is how these 3 dimensions come together. And so, yes, we've gotten some really positive feedback. I guess the best feedback we can get is the teachers who've done this once, come back again. Because I'll be honest, if you don't enjoy it and it's not something you think is valuable, I don't think educators would say, oh, let me spend extra time doing this, because time is valuable to teachers and educators. So we have had people back both summers. I have people already currently asking me, is this happening this summer? I want to be involved. We want to be involved. Audrey Webb, who's the science content specialist, and I were at NATS, the Nebraska Assessment Teachers for Teachers of Science, Nebraska Academy, and lots of interest for this. Like, well, why can't we do this? Can someone talk to us about how to do this to help support us through instruction? So we're really working on that. Audrey's out doing a lot of that with ESUs and some of your districts, as well as myself. So I do think it's had a big impact, and we're going to continue to try to grow this across the state.
Great question and great answer. Thank you for all that work. We're going to turn it over to Polly for an update about NAEP. So Polly, take it away.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name's Polly Bowie. For those of you that don't know me, I see some familiar names and faces on the screen today. I began this new adventure in July as the NAEP coordinator, and Rhonda True had the position prior to me. So I'm just going to give you a really quick update of what is happening now with NAEP. Okay, Jeremy, next slide. So if you are participating in NAEP this year, you know about it. You were notified in September. There were 100 districts selected. 200 schools have been selected. And as you know, it's 4th and 8th grade students. The students will take either reading or math. They will not take both. And then there'll be a few schools that take US history, civics, and that will be just 8th grade students. And the testing window is January 24th to March 4th. So it's coming up. Okay, next slide. Just going to answer a couple of frequently asked questions that I have received. And the first one is, can we opt out of NAEP? So I just want you to know that you just can't. Under the Education and Elementary, Secondary, and Education Act, you are required to participate in NAEP if your district or if Nebraska receives any Title I funds, and that's all of us. So I wish I could say you don't have to do it, but you do. So next slide. Here's another question. So how come our school seems to get selected every time? And I know some schools sort of feel that way, and I can go back and look, and some of you are right, you have been selected. And as you know, last year, if you were selected, it was about this time or maybe a couple of weeks down the road where you found out, after you'd done all the preliminary work, you found out that NAEP was canceled because of the pandemic. So those of you that were in the pilot last year are in it again this year. So hopefully that will change over the years, but I'm gonna just go through really quickly how this happens. So next slide. So here's the first step. Schools are identified, and the US Department of Education uses their database. Some of you have asked, well, why does NDE keep selecting me? It's not NDE that's doing this. And then schools are classified by groups. They look at city, they look at suburban, they look at rural, and then they look at race and ethnicity. And then they're sorted by achievement, and they use NSCAS scores to do this. And so they look at the performance level, and then schools are grouped, and they have an order that they put all the schools in, and they look at that, those NSCAS scores and all those other kinds of things. And let's go on to step 5. Then the National Center for Educational Statistics selects a group, and they really reflect Nebraska. And so they look at our demographics, and we have, I want to say 20.6% of our students are Hispanic. So that means 20.6% of our students taking NAEP will be selected. So if you are a school that has a high Hispanic number, then you're probably going to get selected on a little more often, because they want that representation from Nebraska. Okay, next slide. And so that actually, I do want to say that we're working on that right now. The schools have been selected right now. The students have not been selected, and you will find out in January what specific schools will be selected. And this is just my last slide. You know, this is our most current NAEP data. We, again, don't have anything more recent because we didn't take that assessment last year. But I just want you to know that Nebraska, compared to the nation, does quite well. We are typically either at or above when you compare our average scale score to the national scores. So It's important for Nebraska. We do well. I know if you are one of those schools, please talk it up with your teachers and your students, because it is important information and it means a lot to not only Nebraska, but the nation. So next slide. There's my contact information. Please reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I want to work with you. I know that sometimes this is just one more thing to do, but it's important work. And I know we can do it. So with that, thank you very much. Any questions?
So we've answered some of the questions already. There is a question about 8th grade civics, history, in addition to math or reading. When will we know what they will be taking? So I think you kind of answered that in January, right?
Well, no, actually schools know right now.
Okay.
If they are included to do civics and US history.
Okay.
I
but
think
just
they
not
all
the
know that.
students.
When I sent their letters out in September, the letter said that you'll be doing reading and math. You'll be reading, math, civics and US history, or some schools, 8th graders are just doing civics and US history. They're not doing reading and math, but they already know that. Good question.
Jeremy, this is Melanie. Can I ask a question of Polly?
Absolutely.
Okay, so are you suggesting that that information then went to the building principals? Like I have 8 schools or 6 schools. So I didn't get it as a DAC, but they got it as a building principal that will be facilitating basically the NAEP process?
Yes, school principals got the information, school coordinators got the information, and you should have gotten that. So Melanie, I will send that to you. I don't know why you didn't get that.
Well, and you know what, if it came a long time ago, and obviously it was what do I say, delayed because of the whole situation. And I just want to reinforce what you said, because I can't tell you how many principals say, I get randomly selected every other year. This is ridiculous. Well, what they don't understand is what you tried to clarify, and that is, it's not nationally represented. It is your state demographics that lead to who makes the pool, who makes the cut. And needless to say, as you mentioned, with EL or whatever demographic, you could be in that pool more than what you would anticipate statistically based on the law of averages. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
That is so true. And especially when you look across the whole state of Nebraska, because there are some of our rural areas that don't have a lot of diversity. There are a few that do, and those few that do are probably going to be selected a little bit more. And that's just how it goes. So
well,
you're
it's
absolutely right about
statistically, mathematically, it's accurate. People just, it's kind of like Jeremy trying to communicate NSCAS to the public. It's a challenge, but we'll get there. And I appreciate you sending me that, because I didn't have the information in front of me. I know my schools, I know the dates. And finally, is it on the computer?
Yes, it is. There will be test coordinators that come in to the school. They bring everything with them. They bring the laptops, they come in, they give the assessment. That I think we think it'll take about 90 minutes, and then they leave.
Yeah.
And then do we
So
have I'm sorry.
All the schools need to do is provide us space. And they also have earbuds too. So everything's ready to go.
One last question. Do we have some flexibility? Like when we see who the kids are on the assessment, in the past, we've had flexibility as to this would not be an appropriate assessment for this particular student for this particular reason, probably based on alternate assessment, potentially lack of the computer option. Is that still the case?
That is still the case. You'll get the list, and anybody that is on an alternate assessment, you will check that box, and they'll be taken off.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Any other questions?
So Polly, the schools were only notified if they were selected, right? We didn't send anything out. And if you don't want to take it, in this case, no news is good news type of thing.
No news
right?
is good news. That's exact. You're off the hook. If you don't know anything about this, you're off the hook for this year.
Just so if anybody's searching, it was August 30th when I got the original email, and there was a spreadsheet attached that had the schools and the subjects they were testing. Didn't have the dates because I don't know if that was there yet, but Polly, you provided that to me later. But
yes,
just if anyone wants to search their emails, that's when I got mine anyway.
Yeah, thank you, Lori. That's super helpful. So if you have questions about whether your school was selected or if somebody didn't get an email, just drop a line to Polly and she'll be able to look things up and tell you what they are. We don't need to kind of go through each one of these necessarily and look for individual districts. So if you have questions or concerns about who got noticed or who didn't receive notice, just let's handle it that way by sending an email to Polly. She's looking forward to answering emails this afternoon. So
Be happy to, or phone calls, call me. I'm around.
yeah, when will they be given specific dates for the test?
Yeah, they already have that. They know exactly what days they'll be testing. The only thing they don't have right now is the exact list of students that
The
are
exact list of
selected.
students who will be tested.
Right,
Okay.
and that we're working on cleaning up that list right now, but they won't get that list until right after winter break.
So Lori, if you don't have it or can't find it, just let Polly know and she can help you get it again.
Yeah, I'll be happy
So-
to help anybody.
Do all students in a particular grade take it, or are there specific groups chosen? So it's not necessarily all students.
Right, another great question. It's not all students. You may have fourth graders taking it, and we look at the whole list of fourth graders, and then we select a certain number of fourth graders. They will not all take it.
So
Thank you.
So what you're going to have to do is make sure that there's an alternate plan for those students that aren't taking the test. The teams come in, set up the computers, do the testing, and so that's kind of one nice aspect of NAEP and how they do that. But yeah, you'd have to have alternate programming ready for those students that aren't taking the test.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions that we can respond to?
There's a question about remote learning. If students who are part of the primary schools who are in the remote learning program, are they excluded from testing? They're not actually in the school
They
building.
will be excluded. Any remote learners are excluded.
Good
Thank
question.
you. Okay.
Okay,
I'm just
well,
going
let's
through.
wrap this one up so those listening to the recording don't have to, sit here for too long. As always, thank you for your time and your attention. And as always, please let us know if you have questions. We'll be glad to get those answered as soon as possible. So thank you for your time today.